Okay, so Bob already introduced me, so we don't have to talk anymore about my role here, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some information for you. This is going to be a fairly rapid presentation, so if you have any questions for me, I will be here afterwards to follow up and talk to you further about our company and about the advancements in technology that may be coming to your workplace in the near future and how to work towards successful implementation of those technologies. What we're looking at right here is One Penn Plaza in New York City. And just like we saw recently here with the content development, it's critical in these projects for these customers to have their clients feel engaged with impactful spaces. And innovation is happening all around us, and the idea is to bring this innovation into the workplace and take use of it. So let's walk through some advancements in technology and then talk a little bit about those applications. Because they're really happening right in here at the space we're here visiting today, and will be happening at other shows around us as well. For example, this is a transparent OLED display. I'm sure you've seen these OLED displays, and everyone's wondering, what am I going to do with this transparent display? How am I going to be able to apply this in my meeting space? And a lot of the direct view LED technology we see can't be hidden, it can't disappear. And of course, the transparent display has the ability to disappear, but it didn't have the contrast to be able to be used in a more traditional environment. But now we're seeing these OLED displays like LG that have built-in layers of opaqueness behind them, shades that allow them to shut and be used. So now that you can apply them to video conferencing and other collaborations. Then the key area that's happening for innovation right now is display technology. The newer OLED the technology is still working its way forward. Meanwhile, direct view technology, chip on board, is really advancing. Sizes and the resolutions are advancing, and their applications are advancing. And here's an example of how that technology is creating these immersive environments right at the time we're coming out of the pandemic and looking for more immersive hybrid environments. And here's another example of 21.9, and everyone is asking about, is 21.9 here to stay? Is it going to be a part of my workplace? And this is still to be seen. This is an example of a Zoom call, not a Microsoft front row call, using 21.9, using as much real estate as possible to show the images of these, in this case, for a video call. In the room, capturing the people, we're seeing three Poly P70 cameras. Each of those cameras can take 4 simultaneous images of the room. So we're clearly seeing this combination of innovation both in display, size and dimensions, and also the camera technology. We're going to talk a little bit further about that now. The camera innovation is maturing on tracking. You probably have seen SeerVision with QSC, that they're here at the show. And they're really getting quite good at being able to follow somebody around the room. Same with Sony. Where the challenge is right now is how to capture people properly sitting at a table. The logic required for someone is speaking at a position and 2 people are speaking, and what switching away to different views depending upon the scenarios that are presented by that particular client and how they're engaging in the room. Audio innovation is also happening. This is an example of the Sphere in Las Vegas, and one of the manufacturers in that Sphere is the HoloPlot. And a HoloPlot has these vertical and horizontal arrays. So typically you see linear arrays, very narrow speakers being used to point sound down, and the steering has been difficult. It goes up and down. With these newer types of arrays like the X2, which is a smaller version of the X1, you can put this in a corporate environment or a house of worship or wherever and be able to shoot both down and across and steer. In fact, you could have simultaneous multilingual experiences in the same room with very tight lines of delineation between where the sound profiles are happening. Also, we're seeing Bose have it on their edge speakers, which are able to bounce sound off the surface built into the speaker. And this is really important because alongside technology like display technology, you want to be able to have sound come from the source of where point source reference of where the content is. So you need to be able to direct the sound as if it was coming from the display itself. What you need to keep in mind when you're looking at innovation and technology is the contrast between the planning of the facilities and the adoption of those technologies. So if I'm building out a facility, it's typically 2-3 years before that space is actually built. And I've got to plan alongside the architects and the heat and electrical engineers and make sure to provide them the requirements even before the actual technology that we're going to use in the space has been developed. Meanwhile, the users need to be able to feel comfortable that the products that are going into their spaces have been matured, that they have tested and verified the technology will work in their applications, and they're able to support the clients when they have problems. So there's a cycle that's happening. So with the moment that you're going to be actually buying that technology, you're going to wait until for the last minute to buy it, but you also have to have it be mature enough to be able to support that technology. So these are two parallel universes that we need to look at and come into consideration when we're going to actually put technology in. The other thing you need to think about is the difference between asynchronous collaboration and synchronous collaboration, which are happening right now, every day, as we work and as we play and talk. We may be texting and collaborating with people and not expecting them to meet responding right away. We may be doing our own deep work where we're researching something, coming up with ideas, and then we're bringing it into the group and sharing ideas with that group. And these are two different types of collaboration, but they're happening in our workplaces, and we need to consider the combination of those when we apply these technologies. And one of the most important things is a sense of consistency. I want to know when I'm applying a new innovative solution, how I'm going to connect, how I'm going to use the product, where do I plug in? And the designs of these spaces have to consider the consistency of that experience. And this brings me to what we call the hierarchy of needs. So in the room experience, when I'm coming into a meeting space, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to find the room, right? Otherwise, I can't use the space. The next thing I would need to do is make sure the technology is working, because if I plug in and nothing happens, I'm done. Now I got working technology, I got to think about how I'm going to share and present content and get into the video call. And if that's all working, then I want to make a lot of these rooms. I want to have consistency and uniformity and build them all over the place. And now if I have a consistent, uniform experience, I can start to measure success. I can have a variety of different utilization metrics that I can capture. If I didn't have working spaces, those utilization metrics wouldn't mean a whole lot. And at the very top of that pinnacle is a sense of quality. Is the experience equal for everybody, regardless of gender, age, or skin color? Is everyone seeing and hearing where everybody needs to be as a balance? The same thing is happening on the web collaboration side, a parallel universe, because you're collaborating in person or remotely, and you also have got to get into the call. You've got to be able to launch the call, share content, and then you want to have an interoperable experience. So regardless of what platform, you want to be able to connect, whether it's a Zoom call or a Teams call or a WebEx call. And at the top of that, you have your own sense of parity. Is my experience in a remote environment equal to the people that are in a room? And that, of course, has become a big part of the next generation of design spaces, the sense of parity, equality between being in a space and not in a space. And some of the technologies that are making that possible are using the very foundations of artificial intelligence. And most of this is image capture and machine learning. This is an example of the Zoom platform being able to take multiple images from different cameras and stitch them together using thumbnails, so the experience appears to be the same whether you're sitting in a room or whether you're remote. And this machine learning, which has been around quite a while, is not what I would call AI or a real true AI. It is very basic, but consistent and reliable. And that's the expectation of the user. They're expecting that this stuff works all the time, 100% of the time. But the more intelligent you get, the more choices you get, the harder it is to deliver that sense of consistency. Here in this case, we're using multiple cameras. This is a Hudley system, and there's 3 concurrent cameras that are looking at people's faces and choosing which camera to switch to. And this all goes up into the processor. And in this case, it's going to try to make it look like a TV show in its switching technologies. Other camera systems may use the microphones, intelligent microphones like Shure, who's going to be up in a little bit in front of us with the 910 and the 920. Very important integration between camera switching and camera logic and these beams of sound that are picking up the voices of people that are in the room, and the combination of those two. Would you call that artificial intelligence? I wouldn't call that artificial intelligence, but I would call it an expected experience that the cameras are tracking and switching reliably. There's a lot of variables that are working at the same time. Another thing that's happening is the locations of the cameras are positioned now differently, not just at the front of the room or the sides of the room, but in the middle of the room. Here's an example of Logitech's site where the camera is in the middle of the table, so when I'm looking across and talking to somebody, the camera is going to pick my image up, and if I look at the display, the camera is going to pick my image up as well, and there's intelligence to determine which one of those images to pick up. What is happening is that the spaces are being designed by the hardware, how the hardware can fit into the room to create that parity, the sense of uniformity of experience, whether you're in the room or not in the room. It also means that the spaces are being designed by software. Here's an example of front row. I'm sure you've seen this before, where the positioning of the furniture, the dimensions and aspect ratio of the display, everything is based upon the platform and not about the facility and the space that's being used. And we need to keep this in mind because this kind of technology, at the first you go, well, if I've got more than 8 people, this is not going to be useful for me. I'm not going to have a great experience. The second row is not the same as being in the front row. What you need to look at is the amount of real estate that's happening on that screen, the amount of concurrent information. The more recent generations that are coming into the workplace are expecting to be able to feed and receive and transfer information that is concurrent from different verticals. For example, a chat that is happening at the same time, real time, to threaded conversations and contact that I may have from my asynchronous. I may have posted some slides, I may have posted information. Multiple concurrent bits of information are happening, and I have to have screen material to be able to capture that. Let's put this into actual application. Here's a boardroom which obviously has too small a ceiling to be able to capture a real large display necessary to be able to use the real estate you'd want in this room. So the options here are to put perimeter displays which don't give you a lot more value. And notice there's no video conferencing in this application. When we want to do video conferencing, what we're going to try to do is bring those displays down. You can see on the Windows side, those displays are actually on motorized lifts. But notice the cameras that are also very close to those displays that are being able to see. So when you're looking and to somebody on the screen, you're also looking into the camera. Multiple cameras. This is a One Beyond Crestron system, and the logic is happening where it's switching between camera to camera. But more importantly, look at the tightness of the integration. Look how all of the millwork and the furniture and design of this space. This is a multi-purpose space. This will split into 3 different rooms, and whichever selection you have, the cameras will be automatic, the experience will be the same, but the tightness and the integration of architecture is super, super critical. A lot of the innovation that we're seeing on display technology is on the speed of implementation. This is an example of a Samsung all-in-one display that is being mounted in Singapore. And notice how there's these the boards and channels are coming in, everything's rapidly going into play. What is not being told, and the story behind here, is it took weeks and months to get the hole right on that wall. When customers spend $300,000 on a display, you can count on them spending $300,000 on the millwork that's going to go around the display. And the accuracy and tightness of that point of intersection of the space and the display is where the magic is. There's a gap. There's certainly a gap because the architect is saying, well, how big a hole, what size, how much power, what much ventilation you need to do. And the display person says, you give me the hole, I'll put this in here. The magic happens in making the perfect alignment of those two. And that's where the trick comes in, particularly as these become more elaborate. When you start to add curves and cameras and a lot more real estate into these immersive experiences, the coordination is super critical to make these beautiful experiences come to life. And behind here is a lot of other production equipment that people need to consider, because every automatic system you have needs to have a manual mode. If you think a system that can automatically switch cameras can work on its own, you're mistaken. In most cases, those systems will work just like a car. You've got to get it out of the parking lot, down the road, and onto the highway. And while you're on the highway, you can put it into cruise control. But you're going to come in and out of cruise control, and customers need to understand that that's how you make this whole system work. And the production environment here is super important because it's supporting maybe one room, it can support multiple rooms. It's all on IP-based traffic now, and it is an expected part of the experience. All right, let's step and talk about AI and productivity and what's happening in the workplace. All right, you may, if you're remote, you have the option of being able to have your avatar. But if you're sitting in a room, you're not on avatar mode. You are a human being. And is this productive? I wouldn't, not sure I would say necessarily productive, but you could certainly opt into this. Here's one that is, the translation. Ability to real-time translate. 2 years ago, it wasn't even possible. Most language translators were not able to carry that sense of fluency and automatic. So within a very, very short period of time, we've been able to be successful in translation. But the question is, what's happening in the room? If I'm in a meeting room, is that audio being translated for one person, multiple people? This type of productivity is intended for the desktop. It is not being effectively applied in the meeting space itself. Okay, well here's one that may be, share my notes. So if I want to capture notes, I want to capture an agenda for a meeting, that's great. But the first thing I need to do, if you use Microsoft, how many people are using Microsoft? The first thing you got to do is start the record, right? If you've got these products, you've got to be recording the meeting. Not necessarily your right to be able to do that. You got to be the host, and you have to be able to say to everybody, hey, I'm going to record this conversation. Is that okay with you? And now I can create the minutes. If you do that, you need to be really careful because the AI may switch a couple of words and all of your minutes may have a different sense of intent. You may have said one thing, but the meaning has not been properly transferred. So if you're thinking you're going to save time by having these technologies capture all your minutes, think twice, because the intent of what you said or what your client said is more important than your speed of execution. Okay, so now we're up to the point of putting in Copilot. How many people are using Copilot today? All right, so Copilot today, you're using it in a room? No, you're using it at your desk, right? Look how small the text is. So here is what we were talking about before. If you're in a meeting space, the concepts here are not applicable. What we're missing here when we're talking to these engines, when I'm at my desk, I can type or I can use voice control and I can talk to this generative AI chatbot and get a response. What we need to do is figure out ways in which you and I can be sitting in the same room and talking to this experience. Because suppose I go off and I research the best places to visit in Dubai, and I come back to you and say, these are the most awesome places, and you say, well, what about that place? Oh, I've got to go back to my chat session and find out and ask another question. Why don't we ask it together? In fact, maybe we'll probably know together whether the thing's hallucinating or not. Our work and our ability and being in spaces is the ability to share and information and question and ask things. This needs to come to our meeting spaces. This is where I think the future is going to be. So when we're talking about staying ahead of the curve, we're talking about technologies coming into our space, and the first thing we need to do is address client expectations. Clients are thinking these things are going to run automatic. You're going to say, hang on a second, there's going to need to be some manual mode, and you need to have some time to get used to these products so you're going to be able to work with them internally. To do that, they need to prototype. You need to get them technology, get them the Shure ceiling microphone, and have them put that on their network. Is Dante actually going to work on their network? Then they're going to be able to support their product. Every application that you put in on a client's network needs to have a time where it's productionized or developed before it gets productionized, and for the support team to get familiar with those technologies. Next thing we're going to do is talk about journeys. This is called journey mapping. I'm not sure if you've heard of journey mapping or scenarios where personas. Everybody in the organization comes into the same meeting spaces with different intent. If I'm the leadership, I'm coming into space with certain expectations. If I'm from IT, I'm using the same spaces, but I've got my expectations. If I'm a client, I have other expectations. For example, suppose I am in a leadership position and I have a guest come and join me in the meeting, in my meeting room. They're going to come up the lobby, I'm going to get a call, I'm going to go meet them, and they're going to come into the space and have coffee. What happens when they join a Teams call? They're remote. Their entire journey for that customer is completely different. They're joining a call electronically. What is the experience going to be like? You need to think about how each individual is going to work with the space and how the support people are going to use the space. You need to map that out with the idea that the technology reinforces the experience and not the other way around. And then you need to figure out how you're going to deal with upgrades, because no matter what technology you put in, it's going to change over periods of time.
the infrastructure, like IP-based structured cable, is really critical. The ability to change and adapt to new technology is typically going to be on peripherals. So how you work through upgrades is really important so you can future-proof those solutions. And you need to think about both the physical space, as we talked about, and the virtual space being together. They're both integrated in halves of the equation. One of the things that we use in our consulting practice is the rendering capability and the three-dimensional modeling that happens with the software. So AutoCAD before would be the way to do two-dimensional. Now we're using Revit. Everything in the architectural model is in 3 dimensions. So it's very easy to create a scenario where you can walk through virtually that model and see it. And that's really important for client acceptance. We get the client, the architect, into the same room with the stakeholders to see what the space is going to look like. Example, on the right-hand side, they wanted to put these direct view LED walls, very expensive displays, into this open area, and here's a stairwell that comes through connecting multiple floors. Well, now you have a big obstruction in the middle of the space. Either you're going to be really close to the display, which means I need to have high resolution and spend a lot of money on it, or I'm not going to even see it because it's going to be blocked by stairs. You don't see that when you're looking down in a plan view. You do see it when you're in the glasses and you're walking the space. So use the ability to see the spaces virtually before they're built, reveals the challenges and gets you client buy-in. The last part of this, and what's coming soon, is a sense of what's important about sustainability. We've got the form, we've got the devices and its purpose and its function. It's supposed to do these purposes in this design. The sustainability messages are all over the place right now. We've got Europe, they're leading the charge in terms of defining the requirements, but many of the manufacturers are wondering, what is this going to make, what do I have to differentiate between my competition so that I can be successful when we talk about sustainability? One of the things I would say to you is that a company that's going to put out a sustainable products means they have to completely re-engineer whatever they were doing. In all phases, they've got to look at the technology that they're putting in. And it's not just putting in a chip. It means the entire casing needs to be recyclable. And then in the implementation side, how quickly it can be deployed to save energy. And then on the circularity, what happens to that product when it's no longer in the market? Those affects that kind of initiative affects every part of that organization. So an organization that is able to bring sustainable products in the market is more likely to be a very healthy, very well-run organization. And that's the kind of companies that you want to look for and want to engage with, because they're going to be around before, or they're going to be around a long time. To take a ship, like a manufacturing plant that makes microphones, that makes speakers, that make cameras, and shift it around to make recyclable products they haven't done before is a big ask. So look for the opportunities to raise your hand when you're seeing new products and say, what are you going to do in the sustainable market? And listen to what those manufacturers are providing. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for us to put forward the requirements. No one's setting the stage and the table for them. So what we need to do is, what's the most critical applications? And I think we need to think both at the device side as well as what happens when those devices are no longer available. So in conclusion, I want you to think about adapting these advanced technologies into your workspaces, giving time for the clients to be able to accept what impactfulness this will be in this space. Using AI practically, not just thinking about this on a productivity perspective of how you can make your meetings run more effectively, but also how you can bring in the knowledge of these learning modules, these large language models, and actually engage with them with multiple people at the same time and really take advantage of that opportunity to create productivity and promote the capabilities, and of course keep your eyes on sustainability because it's coming to you in the near future. Thank you.